Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. Thank you for joining me. So this video is going to be a non-review video. My wonderful favorite booktube person ever, Erica from Aura Books, tagged me in several tag videos over the last few months, and I have just, between reading slumps and recording reviews and just the craziness of COVID-19 stuff and stress, I have not gotten around to actually recording the tag video. So I'm gonna go back. So this, Erica made this video back in February, many months ago, way back in the day. So I'm finally getting around to doing it, and it is the, what is it called? The TBR tag. So I'm just gonna go through her video and answer the questions as they come. I didn't actually write them down beforehand. I like to do non-review videos a little more looser and kind of just going with the flow and having it be a little less planned out. So, okay, let's get into the first question of this tag. How do you keep track of your TBR? I use Goodreads. I started using Goodreads I think maybe just a couple years ago, and I very much am an organized, neat kind of person. I like lists, I like to be organized, so Goodreads is a really nice way to just organize books that you've read, books that you have, and of course categorizing them by genre or when you read them or your rating. I don't actually do a whole lot of that. I have a favorite shelf, my TBR, and then TBR that I actually own, so that if I really want to take a look at the books that I do have and want to read, I'll look at my TBR my TBR that I own. But yes, Goodreads is the way that I keep track of my books that I want to read. Okay, question 2 is your TBR mostly print or ebook? Definitely print. I very much prefer physical books. I know that the convenience of reading books digitally is insane, that you can carry, hundreds, thousands of books right in your hand, but something about reading books through ebook is just not as fun or satisfying to me. My boyfriend has a Kindle. I have read a couple books on his Kindle, and I read a couple books from in the Mistborn series. I have, which one do I have? I have the Alloy of Law, which is I think the first of kind of the second trilogy of Mistborn, but we don't own, neither me nor my boyfriend Tyler own the other two in the series, so I did read those digitally. It's nice to be able to walk around with it. It's slim, fits in a backpack. You can highlight stuff and save your place that way, but I just strongly prefer print books over ebooks. How do you determine what to read next? I am very spur of the moment reader. I generally don't plan out the books that I'm gonna read until it's literally time to pick them out. Since I started BookTube, I do have a couple small plans. For instance, Halloween is an easy season of reading to plan around. You want to read thrillers or horror stories or stuff like that. So I have some plans for spooky season, but just when it comes to what it's time to read next, it just depends on what I've finished reading. If I finished reading a book in a series, I tend to want to not just binge a series. So if I've read, say, the third book in a series and there's a fourth one next, I'll read at least one other book before I continue on with the series. I know some people can't stand doing that and they want to just read a whole series through, but I tend to not want to do that. I don't want to burn myself out on a series. But yeah, it just kind of depends on what I've read. I like to slightly change up what I read, so I guess what I decide to read it depends on what I just finished reading. I like to kind of switch up between books. I don't like to just do the same thing over and over again, same fantasy. I like to switch it up with sci-fi or just other genres kind of thrown in. So yeah. So the next question is a book that's been on your TBR the longest. So I feel like I've actually been pretty good about that. I do actually, there's another thing that helps me decide what to read. I do actually like to throw in books that have been on my TBR for a long time to try and force myself to get through them. So let me pull up my Goodreads TBR and see what on Goodreads my oldest book to be read is. I do have some books around that aren't actually inputted into Goodreads yet, but let me just take a look here. Okay, so on Goodreads, the book that I added the earliest, so it looks like I added this on October 17th, 2017, is here, actually let me grab it up here. It is this, the third book of the Abarat series called Abarat Absolute Midnight. I have not read this yet. There are 2 books that come before, and if you know Clive Barker, he actually does a lot of horror stuff, I believe. And this, I mean, you can kind of tell from the art, this book is scattered with a bunch of his actual artwork, and it kind of has, there are some kind of elements of weird kind of horrorness to this, but I think this is like a young adult series. But yeah, this came out a while ago. I loved the first 2 books. It's basically this world where time exists in physical spaces, and each section of the world of Abarat is stuck in 1 hour of the day. So 9 o'clock a.m., 10 o'clock a.m., all the way across, and each section of the world has a name and sort of a characteristic kind of similar to the feeling that kind of that time of day evokes. There's just some really wacky characters, and I've had this for years, much longer than just October of 2017. When did this come out? So this came out in 2011. So I'm not sure why I never read the last book. I will definitely want to reread the first 2 books, but this is the oldest book on my Goodreads TBR. But technically there are books that I just own that aren't actually in this list that I have had for longer, like, oh gosh, I have a box that's not even these books. I have like boxes back there. There's like a book from Garth Nix, one of his really popular books. Crap, what's it called? Starts with the S or something. Okay, I'll put a picture of it somewhere on the screen. But like, that's old and I haven't read it. I think that's like a middle grade book. So there are plenty of books that are old on my TBR, but yeah, Abarat Absolute Midnight is my oldest Goodreads book on my TBR. A book that you have recently added to your TBR. I'll just go in and see. I added some kind of recently because I hadn't watched booktube videos for quite a long time, actually, so I watched kind of a slew of videos one day and added several from that those series of videos that I watched. So there's a few. So I had added 4 on the same day, so I'll just go ahead and read them. So I had added Rules for Vanishing by Kate Alice Marshall, The Humans by Matt Haig, All the Stars and Teeth by Adeline Grace, and Crown of Feathers by Nikki Pal Preto, I believe. So yeah, I think that's kind of a mixture of fantasy, maybe like absurdism, horror. I think Rules for Vanishing is like kind of a horror novel. So yeah, kind of a bit of different books on the spectrum there. But yeah, I added all of those 4 on May 5th of 2020, so this month. Book you have because of the cover. Let me take a look. Okay, I feel like this should have been an easier thing to pick, but the first thing that I saw that kind of fits this question is Hollow Kingdom by Kira Jane Buxton. I had never heard of this book before. I just got it because this iridescent lime green color was sitting on the table in Barnes & Noble, and the art was cool. This crow was really cool with the shiny cover, and then the Seattle skyline. I mentioned that I live several hours away from Seattle and love the Emerald City. So honestly, and the story sounded interesting once I read the blurb for it, but honestly, the cover of it just is what really pulled me in, and it really stands out against my shelf. It's just this lime green color. A book on my TBR that I never plan on reading. Ooh. I think there are a couple like that. And okay, here, I'll look at my Goodreads TBR here. Okay, I went ahead and grabbed a couple books One for sure that I just don't know if I'm ever gonna actually read this. A man called of Uva. I'm not sure how to actually pronounce this, but by Frederick Bachman. I heard this recommended by I think my mom's boyfriend, and I've kind of seen good things about it, but it's like the story about this grumpy old man named Uva, or of. And it's just, so I think it was because I loved Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine. 5-star book. I absolutely loved that book. I think that's why this got onto my radar. But it's just, honestly, it kind of sounds really, really boring. Like, I don't really want to read a book about an old guy in real life. It's supposed to be really touching and sweet, but honestly, I might just get rid of this because it's not really the kind of book that I'm interested in. I have so many other interesting things I want to read, and this isn't super interesting sounding to me. And another one that I feel like it'll just take me forever to get around to. I'm not willing to part with it yet, but, and I'm sorry, some people are probably going to be like, it's so good. Shadow of the Wind. I think it's like historical fiction. I think it's like magical realism, but like historical fiction. And I don't know. You know, historical fiction isn't really my thing, and I don't know. I'm not getting rid of it. Maybe I will read it, but I feel like this book, it is not a priority in any sense. It's just kind of sitting, and I'm hoping that inspiration will strike so that I will get around to it, because I have heard that it's really good. So I don't know, I'd rather read this than A Man Called Uva. So yeah. Okay, unpublished book on TBR you're excited to read. I don't really, that's not something that I generally add to my TBRs, actually. I tend to not add those things, and maybe that just means I'm not as plugged into the booktube community and just the book world in general enough to really know unpublished things that are coming out. So I honestly don't know if I have an answer to this question. I only have like a couple unpublished books. Like the one I can think of is, I think, what is it, Cassandra Clare is going to be writing like an adult fantasy novel. I've never actually read any books by Cassandra Clare, so, or I might have read a couple, like the City of Bone or whatever, the first book or something way back in middle school or something, and I plan to reread it and see what it's like. But that's one of the only unpublished books I have on my TBR. You know, even though it's not technically on my Goodreads, you know, I do want to read the last book in the Poppy War series. So, I mean, I'll be interested to read that. I believe the second book in the Foundry Side series is out now. For a while, it wasn't out yet, so the second book in that series was one that I actively did want to read because I really enjoyed Foundry Side, but I think it's out now, so that doesn't count as unpublished. So yeah, I don't know, have a good answer to this question, unfortunately. Okay, so a book that like everyone has read but you. Oh, that's a lot of books. That's a lot of books. So I think a lot of popular YA novels will count for this. I'm just taking a look here. So, for instance, Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. I can't wait to dive in and see for myself how that series is. Again, yeah, City of Bones. I did read that book, like I said, years ago, but I haven't read the series, and I know that series, The Mortal Instruments, is really popular. I haven't read Circe. I know that's popular. I haven't read Shadow and Bone. I haven't read anything by Leigh Bardugo, and I know that's popular. I haven't read the Shades of Magic series by V.E. Schwab. I do have the first book. Is it hidden? No, I have the first book. Haven't read it yet. So yeah, I think there are a lot of, in particular, YA, my hair, a lot of YA fantasy novels that I haven't read yet that everyone else has read. Books you are dying to read. So that's mostly stuff on the shelf. There's a reason that it's out in my main living space, so there's just kind of any of the books that you see on the shelf. I'm really eager to read. I really want to read the Children of Time series. Alien Sentient Spiders sounds so interesting. Of course, A Darker Shade of Magic. I only have the first book, but I've heard that it's great. I want to read the Broken Earth series. It was rated really highly, I think, or just I've heard good things about it. What else is there? You know, any of this stuff. Like, I haven't read the Skyward. I haven't read the Way of Kings series. The first book is missing. I think Tyler is going to start rereading it. He's already read it, but I think he wanted to start rereading it. I have down here, and I found all of these at my used bookstore. I want to read The Raven Cycle because I've heard really good things about that. I got The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs for Christmas, and I love dinosaurs, and it's a nonfiction book, so that'll be something really refreshing, and I really want to read that. And then a bunch of good old-fashioned YA fantasy stuff, like I have the first book here, A Court of Thorns and Roses. Just a bunch of fun stuff. How many books are on your TBR? Well, according to Goodreads, my want to read list is 151 books long. I don't know, for some people that might be a lot, for some people that might be a pittance, but that seems like a decent amount. I will say that on Goodreads, my read shelf is bigger than my want to read shelf. I'm currently at 161 read and 151 want to read. Those numbers aren't entirely accurate, of course. Like I said, I have books in boxes that I just haven't really bothered to add to my TBR, and I have read many books in my lifetime that I could not possibly remember all of them, so they aren't all accounted for in here. But that's a pretty big TBR. I'm happy that I have read more than I want to read, and I'm happy with my pace. You know, I can read a book a week now, a couple books a week, even if I'm really into it, depending on the length of the book. But anyway, yeah, 151 books on my TBR on Goodreads. Okay, so I think that's actually the last question. So some of my answers were very rambly, so I hope you just enjoy my random little chit-chat moments and scatterbrained thoughts. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Erica, thank you so much for tagging me. I really do appreciate the tags, and you absolutely don't have to feel bad about tagging me in anything. Please keep tagging me in things if you want. I absolutely love it. Makes me happy, and I will get around to making videos of those tags eventually. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you thought this was fun, you know, you're tagged. Please go ahead, and I'll put the questions in the description, but go ahead and make your own video if you'd like. And I hope you enjoyed this and maybe learned a little bit more about just the way that I read and some of my tastes. Let me know if you've read any of the books that I mentioned, if you've heard about them, if you loved them, hated them, especially some of the ones that are a little less well known. Like, if you have read any of the Aberrat series, please let me know, because I just think it's such a unique concept, and I absolutely love the series. It's one of the series that I do want to reread and read the third book, because I have not read the third book. So anyways, this was a lot of fun. Erica, thank you so much. You're awesome, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!